and I heard Break On Through play, and it was pretty exciting. Almost got in a car crash. Problem was, it just sounded horrible. It was like so.
What do a flamenco virtuoso, a cardboard guitar, and a $15 million fight over a car commercial have in common? They all show up in the life of one of rock's quietest legends, who once stared down stage 4 cancer with the same calm he used to navigate Jim Morrison's madness. Quick quiz question: which song was the very first Robby Krieger ever wrote, and just so happened to become a #1 hit that helped define the sound of the 1960s? Drop your guess in the comments. We'll reveal the answer later. Stay tuned for why he refused to replace Morrison even when the spotlight was wide open, and the haunting moment he realized his own son might be channeling a long-lost bandmate on stage. But before we jump into the spiritual guitar solos and psychedelic lawsuits, we've got to rewind to the very beginning, where hidden twists shaped a rock revolutionary. Early life. Los Angeles, 1950s. Transistor radios crackle with Sinatra while surfboards line the garages of post-war suburbia. Into this sun-drenched calm on January 8, 1946, Robert Allen Krieger arrives. One half of a Jewish twin set whose parents fill the house with everything from Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf to big band crooners. 7-year-old Robby is so spellbound by that wolfish vinyl that he wears the grooves thin, accidentally snaps the record, then stares at the shards as if he's broken the moon. That mixture of awe and quiet guilt will shadow his gentle temperament for years. By 1960, he's a lanky boarder at Menlo School in Atherton, where electric guitars are banned in dorms. Robby's workaround was genius in its simplicity. Detune a battered ukulele to mimic a guitar's bottom 4 strings. Tuck it under textbook piles and practice flamenco runs during enforced study hour. Even here, the seeds of his eclectic sound take root. Sabicus riffs mingle with Coltrane sax lines he hears on a contraband radio, while Hebrew school discipline keeps his fingerstyle precise. Back home in '63, his father brings a hand-built Ramirez from Spain. Robby spends that summer bleeding calluses onto its cedar top. A year later, he's surfing Topanga at dawn and studying sitar at UCLA by dusk. And in 1965, inside a half-empty Masonic temple on West LA's 4th Street, he and classmate John Densmore attend their first transcendental meditation lecture. 2 quiet kids chasing stillness before the storm. Nonetheless, the moment he plugs a borrowed Gibson into a seedy Sunset Strip rehearsal room, every secret scale, every stolen study hall strum, and every silent meditation will ignite in a single song the world can't stop singing. Career and success. Robby Krieger strode into the Doors' first rehearsal with a flamenco thumb roll, jammed it into a blues progression, and, almost by accident, sparked the molten groove of Light My Fire, which was the answer to the quiz question in the intro. So, if you guessed that, well done. It was in fact the first song he'd ever written, proof that those secret ukulele nights at Menlo and the Sabicus records he'd worn thin were already paying dividends. Within 2 years, the track hit #1. But the dizzy climb came with a price. Krieger often played referee between Morrison's Dionysian chaos and the band's need for shows that didn't end in handcuffs. After Morrison's death in 1971, the quiet guitarist slid into a heroin haze, numbing grief while trying, unsuccessfully, to front the Doors himself. 2 modest post-Jim albums later, the band dissolved and Robby decamped to tiny jazz clubs where he could chase Coltrane modal runs without arena echoes. His refusal to hire a Morrison replacement cost him fame, but it saved his sanity. The sane years didn't stay quiet. In 2003, Cadillac waived a $15 million licensing deal for Break On Through. Krieger and Ray Manzarek said yes. John Densmore sued on Jim's anti-commercial principle. 6 bruising courtroom years later, Densmore won, the money vanished, and Robby turned peacemaker again, delaying his memoir a quarter century so it wouldn't reopen wounds. Ironically, that same diplomacy allowed him and Densmore to reconcile on stage after Ray's death, with Krieger's son Waylon singing the classics, a moment Robby calls "hearing Jim through my kid." Cancer tried to silence him next, stage 4 melanoma in his 70s. Immunotherapy worked a miracle, and Robby walked straight from the hospital to the studio, laying riffs for his funk jazz outfit, the Soul Savages, as if nothing had happened. Nonetheless, the real surprise isn't how often he's cheated oblivion. It's the serene, almost quirky life he's built when the guitars are hung and the crowd goes home. Canvas and chords, Robby the Painter. Step into Robby Krieger's home studio on a lazy Tuesday and you might find the legendary fretmaster wearing splattered sweatpants, Miles Davis humming from a vintage radio, and a half-finished canvas blazing with psychedelic oranges and molten reds. Painting began as post-show wind-down therapy in the late 80s, but it turned into a second career once he realized fans wanted whatever poured out of his brush as much as what flowed from his SG. A decade ago, he quietly launched Art for a Cause, selling limited edition prints, like the swirling Light My Fire piece now hanging inside the Whiskey A Go-Go, and funneling every cent to charities battling multiple sclerosis and pediatric cancers. You'll see how that dovetails with his bigger philanthropic strategy when we dig into income and net worth. The act of trading power chords for paint strokes also doubled as recovery medicine during his stage 4 melanoma odyssey. Each bold streak on the canvas was, in his words, proof the colors weren't done with me yet. Rock and roll on the fairway. Krieger's other unexpected canvas is a sun-bleached fairway. Introduced to golf by his dad long before fame beckoned, Robby now co-hosts the annual Medlock Krieger Celebrity Invitational, a 2-day mashup of birdies by daylight and all-star jams after dark. Friends joke he's as precise with a 9-iron as he is with a Dorian mode solo. Easy swing, no wasted motion, and a grin when the shot sings. In 2014, the event smashed its own record by raising over $400,000 for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Last year, it added a scholarship fund for young musicians who can't afford instruments. As mentioned earlier, golf also reveals Robby's competitive spark. He'll humble brag about sinking a 40-foot putt, then shrug that it was just good karma. The fairway offers him the same discipline meets flow state he first touched in flamenco lessons. Only now, the applause comes from mockingbirds and the occasional startled caddy. Quiet rituals, loud legacy. Long before wellness apps made meditation mainstream, Krieger and John Densmore were sneaking into Maharishi lectures in West LA. These days, Robby still honors that practice with 10 silent minutes at sunrise. No incense, just deep breaths, and maybe the distant hiss of the Pacific if he's at his Malibu retreat, the same cottage where the Doors once posed for those iconic beach photos. He pairs the routine with surfer-style dawn hikes in the Santa Monica Mountains, a stainless steel travel mug of green tea, and an irrepressible sweet tooth. Friends swear he can locate the best chocolate chip cookie in any zip code. The discipline extends to guitar upkeep in an almost zen way. He rarely changes strings unless they snap, and he still tunes mostly by ear. It's the same laid-back ethos that led Fender to hand him a Telecaster made entirely of recycled cardboard. He loved the tone so much he played it on stage, a comedic sight gag that doubled as an eco-statement. The Space Cadet who couldn't see. On stage in the late 60s, Robby sometimes stared past the audience with a faraway glaze, earning the nickname Space Cadet. The real reason was less cosmic and more corneal. His myopia was so severe that contact lenses dried out under stage lights and glasses slipped down the sweat. Instead of complaining, he leaned into the myth, standing ramrod still while his fingers did the talking, a visual counterpoint to Morrison's Dionysian swirl. That poor eyesight also birthed a running joke among techs. Every set list was printed in 48-point font so Robby can see the encore. Though it sparked rumors of acid trips, the truth was strictly ophthalmic, and in a strange twist, helped crystallize the band's image of controlled chaos flanking total abandon. Nonetheless, behind every brushstroke, tee shot, breath cycle, and blurred stage light lies a web of human connections, loves found, friendships tested, and a father-son duet that still gives Robby goosebumps, making the next chapter of his story impossible to skip. Relationships and connections. Robby Krieger's inner circle has always been a quiet counter-melody to the Doors' public roar. The love story with Lynn Veers began in pure rock opera fashion. Jim Morrison, already tangled with Pamela Courson, tried to woo Lynn, invited her to crash at his apartment, only for Pamela to appear, sparks to fly, and Lynn to sprint into LA traffic with Jim in hot pursuit. Robby stepped in as the calm after that storm. They married in 1970, and 50-plus years later, Lynn remains the steady backbeat to his improvisations, proof that tranquility can grow from chaos. Family always mattered more to Robby than headlines. His fraternal twin Ronnie was the Doors' first roadie, once subbing for Jim on a TV shoot with a mop of hastily curled hair and no one the wiser. Ronnie's passing left a silence Robby still feels, but the torch passed to Robby's son, Waylon. On stage today, Waylon channels Morrison's swagger while his dad stands beside him in proud disbelief. "It's like Jim dropped a spark in him," Robby says, eyes shining. The father-son chemistry recently turned a small club gig into a tear-jerking reunion for aging fans who never thought they'd hear Roadhouse Blues delivered with that kind of fire again. Then there's John Densmore. Years of lawsuits over Cadillac money, and the band name taught them both that principles can cost millions. Yet when Ray Manzarek died, Robby was first to call. They met, hugged, and the feud melted. Now, they jam charity gigs together, Robby the peacemaker once more, the same role he played backstage in '67. Still, every heartfelt embrace, patched friendship, and proudly shared stage feeds directly into Robby's financial story, frugal choices, missed windfalls, and one colossal catalog sale that reshaped his legacy. And that's where our spotlight turns next. Income and net worth. Robby Krieger's balance sheet is as understated as the man himself. Industry trackers peg his 2025 net worth at about $15 million, built on three pillars: roughly $1 million a year in Doors royalties, steady six-figure tour receipts with his Soul Savages project, and gallery sales from his charity art prints. The biggest leap came in 2023 when he sold his share of the Doors catalog to Primary Wave. Insiders whisper his slice landed somewhere north of $30 million, though Robby diverted much of that windfall into family trusts and the charities he champions. Contrast that with the Cadillac fiasco of the 2000s, a proposed $15 million SUV ad payday torpedoed by John Densmore's lawsuit, money gone in a puff of ideals. Add legal fees from that 6-year battle and you see why Krieger still buys guitars on a budget. Yet the most revealing clues to his quiet prosperity hide not in bank ledgers but in the walls and views he's chosen to live within. And those doors are about to open next. Real estate. Krieger's taste in homes reads like an architectural mixtape, equal parts mid-century cool, canyon serenity, and surfline nostalgia. His flagship address was a 6,600 square foot Bel Air pavilion designed in 1971 specifically for Robby and Lynn by architect Matthew Leeser. Think Frank Lloyd Wright angles filtered through Laurel Canyon soul. Perched on 1.4 acres, the 4-bed retreat wrapped terrazzo floors around a courtyard pool where the band once floated lyric sheets like paper boats. Inside, Robby installed a studio he cheekily dubbed Horse Latitudes. Its glass walls framing sunsets he swore helped him nail the solo for Spanish Caravan. By the 2000s, the house passed to Limp Bizkit's Fred Durst. In 2022, it hit the market at $13.9 million, proof that good riffs and good lines appreciate. Dial back to 1968 and you'll find the Doors lounging at Robby's Malibu beach cottage, barefoot on weathered decking for that now iconic photo shoot. The modest shack doubled as a crash pad for Jim Morrison and, years later, a quiet refuge where Robby first picked up a paintbrush after gigs. Even in activism, real estate shapes his story. In 2023, Krieger joined neighbors blocking a $277 million Benedict Canyon mega-development, arguing the hills already have their own soundtrack. It was classic Robby. Protect the vibe, not the vanity. Nonetheless, the man who built studios into living rooms and surfboards into decor lets his real passions roar down the open road, and the engines of that story are revving up next. Vehicles and cars. Robby's garage starts with a love letter to chrome and tail fin nostalgia, a mint-condition 1955 Chevy Nomad he's called the Crown Jewel. It isn't the fastest wagon in LA, but the guitarist swears the rumble of its V8 reminds him of the day Light My Fire first hit the radio, so he babies it with Sunday morning drives up PCH. Parked beside it is a rotating cast of classic curios, a 60s VW microbus from his surf years, and rumor has it the same dusty station wagon that once hauled the Doors' amps down Sunset before they could afford roadies. Two wheels? That's where his rebel streak really shows. Krieger's a Harley-Davidson lifer, having laid down scorching tracks for Harley's American Motorcycle soundtrack and even headlined the Republic of Texas rally, shredding Roadhouse blues in front of 40,000 leather-clad riders. Friends joke he'll compare Harley exhaust notes to guitar timbres like a sommelier swirling wine. Private jets? Robby's never owned one, but Doors' legend includes that surreal transatlantic flight where he sat next to Jimi Hendrix. Jimmy spent 6 hours plotting the fastest way to score London psychedelics while Robby politely nursed tomato juice. That lone brush with jet set excess convinced him he preferred aisle seats and paperback novels. Yachts and helicopters stay off his playlist entirely. If he's crossing water, it's usually on a borrowed dinghy in Malibu, guitar case propped beside the cooler. Flash was Jim's department. Robby's happy so long as the engine starts and the sunset's in tune. However, even the roar of a Harley or the purr of a Nomad can't match the sound now coming from his present-day stage setup. And the life he's carving in 2025 is our next stop. Current lifestyle. At 79, Robby Krieger is busier than musicians half his age. His funk jazz outfit, the Soul Savages, dropped a debut record last year, and the sessions, cut days after his clean bill of health from immunotherapy, have him grinning like a kid discovering Coltrane. Every few weeks, he and Waylon headline the Whiskey A Go-Go, replaying entire Doors albums for packed rooms. Robby swears that when Waylon belts, "When the music's over, I catch Jim peeking through his eyes." Festival season is booked too. Bottle Rock Napa on May 25th. Followed by a European swing fans voted for via his Instagram poll. Offstage, he ships new canvases through Art for a Cause, funneling proceeds into the very cancer research fund that saved him, while also steering scholarship cash from this year's Medlock Krieger Invitational toward under-resourced school music programs. Asked why he finally sold his share of the Doors catalog, he shrugs. "I'd rather paint hospitals with it than worry about spreadsheets." He and John Densmore now text like old college roommates, proof that the quiet peacemaker's long game paid off. And when reporters prod him about slowing down, he taps his SG, laughs, and quotes a line he once wrote for Jim: "The time to hesitate is through." Thanks for watching. Hit like if Robby still lights your fire, subscribe for more deep dive stories, and click one of the other videos on your screen for the next Legend's Tale.